Hello and welcome back to the Welsh Women's Rugby Appreciation Podcast. Tonight we are going to be telling you all about the first two warm-up games that Wales women played as warm-ups for the WXV. We'll be then previewing the WXV itself, and then we'll be covering any bits of news and gossip that have come out of the Wales camp lately. Joining me, as always, is my friend and colleague, Dr. Harley Worthy.
Good evening.
Good evening. And my other friend and colleague, Dr. Julia. Hello, Julia.
Good evening. Thank you for the promotion.
Yes, unfortunately, Doctor friend and colleague Shans is not available tonight. She's on holiday in Spain. Is it Spain she is in?
Yep, she's in the Canary Islands.
So shout out Shan. Hope you're having a nice holiday, but she's not here. So we'll speak on her behalf. Everything that we say, Shan agrees with.
I was just going to say she told me already. She co-signs everything I'm about to say.
Excellent, excellent. Right, so where to begin? Where to begin? It's been a while since we've last all sat together and talked about women's rugby. We're building up to WXV as we've said, so we'll talk a bit about just WXV itself towards the end. But we've got two warm-up games to cover. We've got the Scotland game and we've got the Australia game. Now, one of those games had a good outcome. I was about to say one of those games was good. One of the games ended in a good way. The other game did not, and unfortunately, because of the way that we experience time in a linear fashion, we have to speak about the one that was bad first. And that was the game against Scotland. So we went up to the Hive. Was it in the
Yep.
Hive?
Sure was.
Yeah, unless they've changed the name again for more sponsorship.
Went up to the Hive and played a game against Scotland. A game of two halves, I think it's fair to say. So after this game,
Certainly.
Ioan Cunningham said, ignore the results, pay attention to the performance. So, Harley, how would you rate the performance?
Can we break down the performance into a few things? So let's start off with we'll have goal line defense, we'll have general defense, we'll have attack, and we'll have kick chase. Right.
Okay.
And
Absolutely.
in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to take goal line defense, and I'm going to give that a solid 8 out of 10. Because yes, Scotland did score, but we held them up so many times. There's a lot of laughing. Everything else, absolute garbage.
Some more garbage than others.
Yeah. So a few things. So one of the things we talked about after the Six Nations, and when we're reviewing WXV and all things, cat out wide far too easily. And as soon as Scotland finished that, the score ramped up, and that was a big reason for what looked like a very promising first half of us being within touching this. Well, actually, no, in the lead. Madly, I'm pretty sure we were in the lead at that point. Was it 8-7?
We went into half time in the lead, yeah.
Yes.
And then it at 5-7.
We weren't. 5-7, yeah, sorry, there was a misconversion.
Yeah.
Too much rugby is all getting blurred in my brain now. But then as soon as Scotland went, oh wait, we can run around Wales because they're always incredibly narrow in defence because the centre partnerships tend to be quite slow. So the wingers have to be in that bit further because the 13 isn't going to be able to cover the space. Attack, it looks like you've got Flaky George's head right. Pretend now you've never played rugby in your life. Pretend now you have not won back-to-back Premiership titles and play like that. Because the Flaky George of Gloucester and the Flaky George of Wales are two different players, and I'm convinced somehow they've picked up there's an evil twin and she's the
Well,
one
I
who's
will
playing in
say
red.
that the WRU stock photo of Flaky George does not look like Flaky George at all. So maybe it is a different person.
There is also something to be said. I mean, the difference between playing with Gloucester and playing with Wales. We're going to break down the inconsistencies within Wales as we go over these two matches, but just in terms of the level of support that she gets and simply the way that the backline plays at Gloucester, I feel like truly, and she has said to a lesser extent, at some level, like I don't know how she would say it diplomatically. I'm not her, so I can say it. Like, she doesn't have the support in the Wales backline that she does for Gloucester. When you think about who else plays in the backline at Gloucester, we don't have an Emma Singh. We don't. There's a lot we don't have. But
as much as I love Kira Bevan, she is not Mo Hunt.
Exactly,
Kira Bevan is incredibly good at what Kira Bevan does,
but a very different
to Gloucester is. very different.
Exactly. And they're very different scrum halves. And in fact, Mo Hunt has spoken very briefly about Kira Bevan in praise, but has talked about how she is one of the more challenging ones because it's simply a very different, first, it's a different 9-10 connection. And second of all, Kira is unpredictable in her own way. She's got her own tricks. We'll talk about those, especially, we'll be able to talk about them in the Australia game. But in terms of the support that Flaky has, it's easy to pin it on her. We pin a lot of problems on the 10 for Wales rugby in general. But I think we do have to get into, and I think Harley, you'll be able to speak to it better, but we have to get into the what I would call critical weaknesses, mostly in the centers, but even the wings. You can have Jasmine Joyce all you want. That's one person. And if she can't get the ball, that doesn't matter anyway. And in terms of her defense, she's a winger. You shouldn't be relying on her. And for me,
I didn't think of that. Is it worth trying Jazz Joyce in the 13 jersey?
So I've wondered that too, especially because she is strong for a winger. I think it would be okay. My big thing, and another thing that we saw when we get to Australia, and that we will remember from her amazing time over the Olympics, is she's a great tackle.
She is phenomenal.
You're setting off my Josh Adams at 13 Twitch when you say,
goodness,
great
okay.
defensive wing, let's put him at 13.
I was worried. But yeah, no, I would like you guys to carry that. I'm not a backs analyst, but it's something even I see, and I feel like that's got to mean something.
I'm a futility back 5 forward because I'm equally shit across all 5 positions. But
I'm adding that to my dictionary immediately.
Yeah, it's my thing.
Futility back.
Futility player.
There we go.
I said I was the Josh Turnbull of Sidmouth 2's last season. I played pretty much in everywhere in the back 5, although nowhere near as well.
I thought you were going to say that you won 3 Grand Slams with 0 minutes on the pitch, but
I mean, to be fair, Wales won 3 Grand Slams, and I didn't play a single minute in any of them. So, I mean, that is fair.
Sticking back to this Scotland game, then. So the first half, as you said, Scotland had 1 try disallowed and 2 held up in that first half. Mm-hmm. So when people were saying, "Oh, we're winning, cool," I was like, "Yeah, but we're not really winning." And then in the second half, we became really not winning, not even technically. Julia, it went badly wrong in that second half.
Yes.
Expand.
Expand on that, sure. I mean, it does go back to defense, only because if you look at the score, you can see we didn't defend very well. We can always keep going back to the fact that the attack is weak for Wales, that even when we have a good opportunity, it's honestly, when I think of the Scotland game, it was like 50% chance that they are going to use it at all. We are still having ball retention problems, both in keeping possession, which is crazy considering who we have at breakdowns. That should not be happening. We have several turnover masters. We should not be getting turned over like that. And also straight up handling errors is what I keep thinking about. And I think about it, I think also because I just watched the Australia match in which we did not fix those problems. The second half of the Scotland game seemed like classic Wales women's problems. And all of them were highlighted. We can go back to the jumble in the back line. We've been talking about the mismatches. I maintained that in the Scotland match, more so than the Australia match, the back line was even weaker. And in that match, at least, we were relying on them for defense far more than we should have. And this was the result. I wish I could get more granular with it because I don't really understand what happened. I don't know why it got so bad. I don't know if it was a question of leadership, if it was just nobody was steering the ship. I don't know if it was the wrong people on the pitch. Apparently, Ioan thought it was the wrong people on the pitch because of the way that he changed the lineup. I really wish I could have been there for the week between the 2 matches because you can tell from the 2 performances that something was off for Scotland.
So it was 40 points to 12. It ended in the end, something like that. It reminded me of the Ireland game. And I know it's a friendly, but it reminded me of the Ireland game in the Six Nations where I was like, wow, we were beating these 2 years ago. And now
yes,
they're putting 40 points on us. And they had 2 tries held up. They had one disallowed, and they also absolutely butchered a walk-in 2-on-1, held onto the ball where they should have passed it. So there could have easily been another 4 tries out there. So this was nearly 60 points. A 60 point off Scotland, not off England or France or New Zealand. 60 points off Scotland. And so I was like, are we really? I thought the whole point of going into WXV1 last year was that we would know what it would take to be better now. And it's just not happened. And Harley, we've spoken about this plenty of times. We haven't gotten better off the back of that at all. All we've learned how to do is how to lose games. And, you talk about the deterioration in the second half. Like, Harley, you referenced it. The kicking was poor and the chasing of the kick was non-existent. Like, proper, like, someone run after that ball, please. Engage Labrador mode.
I was honestly happier that they didn't, even though we needed to several times to clear. I was happier that they didn't because it was so inconsistent. And I wouldn't even say, okay, yes, I will. The recovery of it, any semblance of kick chase was a crapshoot. Sometimes they would go after it, sometimes they straight up didn't. And I do remember that from all of us chatting for that one. Was sometimes it was just kicked. No plan.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know whether it was like you're professional rugby players. You must know that you're supposed to chase a kick, right? So is it we don't know who's supposed to chase it? Normally the winger. If in doubt,
it seemed like miscommunication. A lot of things seemed like in some form of personnel mismanagement, whether it was the wrong people on the pitch, it was the wrong people calling plays, or it was the wrong people executing the plays. It could be any number of them. But when you ask about like why we're not doing better against places like Scotland, I look at Scotland and especially the things that they've been doing recently in terms of their coaching hires, how serious they've been getting about making sure that the contracts are good, which we know WRU hasn't been doing, and unhappy players play bad games. Scotland's been doing and whether it was off of something bad or not, Scotland is actually trying. And we can't say necessarily that the coaching staff for the women is doing the same, in my opinion.
All right, so I just want to go back to 2023, which is when we beat Scotland last. That game, what did Wales do well? What did Scotland do bad? That caused Wales to win and Scotland to lose. So for me, what Wales did very well was they outmuscled Scotland at this time. Very fancy team, very good playing out wide, but you could beat them up front, and very stereotypical of a lot of Scotland teams over the past. If you give them a bloody nose, they go to shit, and you can scrum and maul them, and it's very flat track bully, and that's what Wales did very well in 2023. 2024, Ireland and Scotland have had these professional contracts. Italy have gone to their semi-professional model, I think. It's still the same. I don't know the ins and outs of their contracts and how it works. So naturally, their physicality got better because they could spend more time bulking in the gym, doing and working on fitness and working on things. So now Wales' strength, which is being a flat track bully, doesn't work as well because
track's not
teams
flat
can stand
anymore.
up to them. Yeah, exactly. So Scotland worked on the thing that was thing. The big weakness of Wales in that thing was their backline. When Scotland were able to get the ball wide, they were cut up a bit easy because the defence organisation is just not there for whatever reason. 2024, Wales haven't fixed that, but they've not done anything to strengthen the pack. So basically, Wales have stayed exactly where they are. Scotland have improved. Ireland has basically been told, we kind of give a shit about you now. And then all of a sudden, that's motivation.
And they
ran with it. So they've shot ahead. And that's where I think the biggest frustration for all the previous versions of this, although now I'm glad that what we should have said is, yes, we're back for another episode, but this is our first dedicated episode as a new separate pod, not just a bonus pod from the WRAP. Although we're still WRAP. Whatever. We'll get into acronyms later. But because of that, but we're saying this, and then we don't see the change. And that was, for me, the biggest problem with the Scotland game is I didn't see any change, anything. I didn't see us trying anything new in attack. There was no, different shape. There was no, funky plays. The line-out was a bit woeful. The defensive system didn't seem to change. That's one thing I do actually, when we go on to the Australia game, I don't want to talk about is actually, I think there was I could see just this little bit in the defence that made me think, maybe we're actually going in the right direction. But one thing I do want to bring up, so I do want to just chuck a positive in, is that's the first Wales game in forever where all the backs scored by tries. All the tries scored by backs, even.
All the backs are scored by tries. That is the
all the
first time
backs
that's
scored
ever
by tries.
happened.
Yep.
He's so not used to saying it that it doesn't fit in his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go with that. Not child.
I just want to tack on. It's interesting that you say about the rucking, the mauling breakdowns regarding physical strength, because one thing that we as friends have pissed and moaned about offline, online, everywhere is that for a long time, and again now with whatever is happening with WRU socials, all we've ever seen is them in the gym. That's all we know they do.
Apart from
We
when they
know
were
there
in that All Blacks TikTok.
Or when
Black
they
Ferns
when they were in a cool Black Ferns TikTok that is way better than what we put out. But no, all we get are either they're at the ropes course or they're at the gym. In which case, what are you doing? I mean, I understand that we're playing a bunch of younger people, and we're definitely going to have to talk about that for Australia, because that's where the wheels have started to come off with rostering. But I look at, and it's interesting you brought up 23, because I did think of two things, especially having to do with strength. And again, you can't ever blame a loss on one player, two players. It's never just one or two. But we are missing Siobhan Lillicrap and we are missing Shauna Harries, who are two very strong people, and who could also drive breakdowns, direct in them, had a lot of leadership. We don't have either of those. Not saying that Beth Lewis can't do it. Of course she can.
Beth Ann
She's
Lewis.
just a Beth Ann Lewis. Sorry, she has gone by Beth on her Insta, so I thought that you were supposed to.
Oh, okay, maybe.
No, I don't want to do it wrong.
No, it's just
oh, I know. We are Bethan supporters.
Yes, exactly.
The name Bethan.
Yeah.
Bethan Lewis. And I know how to pronounce it. It's not Beth Ann. So yes, we've got Bethan Lewis. We've got Butch when they deign to play her. We've got people who can direct it. That said, definitely when I think of 23 and I think of that kind of super strong pack, I'm thinking about people that we aren't seeing as much. We've also got people injured again for some reason. Oh no, Glenn Crabb was in this game. Wasn't in Australia, but lots of people that you rely on for strengths, not here.
Well, we'll talk about selection in a minute.
Sure.
After the game, Ioan Cunningham comes out and says, I should say that if our recall of this Scotland game is a little hazy, it's because there have been no official highlights reels put out,
and no match report from WRAP.
No match report by W. And there was also a minute there, and by a minute I mean a week, where Julia was the unofficial social media team for the WRU, because they did not even tell us the game was happening. You had to already know the game was happening to know that it was happening.
So you have to bully them.
Yeah, which eventually worked, but
it did. They just started sharing Gwen Crabb's reels.
Yeah,
nailing it.
The players started doing it themselves. But after the game, Ioan Cunningham comes out and says, first thing that he says is, we need Wales fans to ignore the result. And that's a trigger point for me. Immediately, I'm like, no.
Who says that?
This isn't pre-season for your whatever seconds.
Well, I was going to say, this isn't your high school team. We're not saying, come on, girls, like you're still going to get to nationals. You're the senior team.
And it matters more. It matters more for the women's team, because there's like a whole generation of young girls and women who are looking up to this team, and they've got nothing else to look up to. So
and they have to decide if this is the team that they want to strive to play for. Why not look at league or another sport if they're not going to support you? But this is what they get.
So if you are getting battered week in, week out by our nearest rivals, it really, really matters. Winning is everything. Winning is everything. Yes. Winning makes everything better, and losing makes everything worse. We've seen this in the men's.
And having the mentality to pursue it as well, even if it's elusive.
All I'm saying is explain dragon flans.
I wouldn't even dare. But we've seen it in the men's national side now, where because the team is losing so much, journalists are starting to fish around for negative stories. Like there was one story in the Mail that they've cut the costs on how much money they're spending on flowers for the reception hall. Bloody WRU absolute shambles. And it's like that kind of thing comes, and sponsors will become less interested, crowds will go down. Losing makes everything worse. So it doesn't matter that it was a friendly and a warm up for the WXV. It's still really bad.
By the way, when you lose a warm up or a friendly or a preview, it makes the people not watch you in the actual tournament. You know that, right? Especially
Yeah.
for something like WXV where they're going to be playing in South Africa. Well, all right, it's good that they're not in one this time, because if they were in one, it would be even harder with the difference. I guess it's great that they're in South Africa, so hopefully people in Europe still tune in.
Yeah.
But the big thing about Ioan coming out and saying, don't pay attention to the results, it sounds a lot like don't watch the rugby to me.
It's very peeing on your shoes and telling you it's raining.
Yeah.
And it's insert my normal rant about stop with the losing now is
It's the
good
loser
because it means we'll
mentality.
win later.
It's the
No, it
loser
isn't.
mentality.
Winning is
Yeah.
good. And then he says, "Oh, and it's good because we had 6 under-20s players in there." I'm like, "Oh, fantastic, cool."
Okay.
Did
That's
that
also not great, by the way, but okay.
did, did that go well, Ioan? How do you feel about that decision now to select them? Do you think it was a good plan?
What
Did
I
they
what
benefit from that?
what
Did
I
we
don't
benefit from
understand,
that?
he never wants to address that. He will sometimes address selection before a match in print. He will never get in front of reporters and talk about why he made the choices that he made, what is actually difficult. He'll come out and he'll say, we had a really hard, and he always says it, by the way, so it's kind of lost meaning. It was really hard to make the choice. Everyone's a winner. Everybody got a little trophy that says, like, I went to the gym today. Okay. Who's gonna be best? Do you know? Have you been watching? Who do you have confidence in? Because it sounds a lot like he's just giving platitudes. And when you get platitudes, you think, like, doesn't really inspire
But he
confidence.
was giving lots and lots of young players opportunities. It was a completely fresh team,
Sure.
apart from Cecilia Tuipulotu, who played in both games. But apart from that, and Gwendolyn Pierce, who played in both games. And Beth Ann Lewis, who played in both games.
Oh,
Molly Reardon,
Apart
who
from
played
that,
in both games.
and Kira Bevan, who started both games as well. But apart from that, and Clayton George, who played in both games. Everybody else was completely.
I think Jazz did
Joyce
as well, but we would
Jazz
never. I
played
was
in
gonna
both
say
games.
we would never
And
just
that,
pin
but
everything
that
on
she was the
Jazz.
only one, and Jenny Hesketh also played in both games. But apart from that, completely fresh team.
Completely fresh, and by the way, on purpose, not because of a shortage.
Exactly. So going on from that, then we then started getting the noises of discontent kind of emanating through different ways. So what we got was Scrum 5 saying, WRU have confirmed that the contracts are finally sorted with the women's team. And I was like, I don't recall the headline saying that there was a problem.
And by the way, I have gotten back channel information that they aren't solved anyway, but not the point.
So we suspected between us that something was up. And then we had this thing of like, and it's finally been sorted. Good news, everybody. And it was like,
And you can tell because they're playing so happy.
Yeah. So it's just like, this again? Really? This again? And then going into the Australia game, which we are going to be happy in a minute because we did win that. Going into the Australia game, we then had Kira Bevan's press conference. So Kira Bevan has been made captain, which is something I think that we support on this call. Good call.
Absolutely.
I still think it should be a back five forward or hooker, but
we know we
know
we
a good
know
choice in that.
We know who we're looking for, and I do have a very as formed an opinion as I can get with, of course, again, no input from anybody with real vision into the team. I think KB was probably in his mind before the one that we all wanted. We could say it, we're all thinking Alcal. I think it's just an age thing, and then also, while I think it's nonsense, and the reason that she was forced out there is I think they don't like that she plays in London anymore. That's what I think it is. I think Kira's closer.
Well, so
I love it. I'm pro KB. I hope you see this. KB, great job. I loved it. But
this is just my general belief that I don't believe
please,
back should be captains.
Okay.
Remember, Kira is a lapsed flanker. No.
Yeah, that's true. So Kira comes out in the press conference and she gets asked, something along the lines of, what should we expect for the Australia game? You know, the classic underarm, like, are you
Softball.
excited for the game, Kira? Type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has a bit of she says the thing that she's been told to say.
I was going to say she is extremely media trained.
And then so she goes, well, it's not about winning, it's about the performance. But then she just starts to meander a little bit, starts going, of course, it's not about winning. We're not interested in winning, it's the performance. But winning would be good, obviously. But to win, you have to perform well. If we perform well,
she would like to say how she actually feels.
If we perform well, the win will come with it. But yeah, it'd be pretty bloody good if we did actually win. You know, I mean, we haven't won in ages. It'd be nice if we actually won a game of rugby. But the performance is what matters. And it was kind of like, stop. Like, I can only imagine there was a press person at the back of the room going, Kira,
what I love about her being, regardless, we needed a new one. But what I love about her is the choices that she's got that dog in her. Like, we know, especially if you are a Bristol fan, we know, like, loves to win, knows how to win, and is very happy to encourage the people around her to win. It's not an effort to her. It isn't like subtracting from her game. It doesn't distract her. She likes to power up people around her. It killed me that you could tell exactly what you said. All she wanted to do was say, like, we're going out there to rip their heads off. We're going to do it. That's what I want to hear. That's what we all want to hear.
So
sorry, go on.
So was it before the Australia game that the actual squad for WXV was announced?
Yep, yes. In between the games.
So big.
And by the way, who we played in Australia is not all the people going, but go on.
So the big name omissions were Lisa Newman, Gwyneth Hopkins, and Crab as well. Was that the other one? Was there anybody else? Any other big names that we missed out?
I mean, considering actually, I thought she played quite well and scored the try. Meg Webb, I thought was, and you know, they made big songs of her coming back.
I am a Meg Webb apologist. I was going to talk plenty about what I think was a very obvious lack of Meg Webb in Australia. I think it was extremely foolish, A, not to have her in that game, and B, not to bring her, especially now that whenever we move into the Australia thing, we know we have a center shortage. And then she played an astounding game for Bristol instead. But
yeah, so is it safe to say that it's only 30 players as well? It's not very many.
It's only, I mean, it's 30 players for 4 games. I mean, when you think the World Cup for years was 31 for like up to 7.
Several, yeah.
Maybe it does leave you quite shallow.
Isn't it like 37 for Six Nations? That's why.
I mean, yeah. So typically for like tours and Six Nations, and like you tend to go up to about 37, 38. Yeah. I've seen squads of 4. Like I have teams do occasionally carry squads of 40. A lot of, I mean, that's usually with like a few apprentice players, whatever. But that means, or you know, test starting hooker, uncapped hooker is.
But I was going to say, God,
the men's.
God knows now we wish that we had. Well, I don't know. I don't even know if having more slots available would help with the hooker problem. I don't know what we're going to do with that. We'll have to talk about it for Australia, but I'm worried about several positions.
I'm just trying to find it as well, because the way that they actually announced it triggered me slightly, because the names weren't in any discernible order.
It was they did it in the 15 to 9, 1 to 8. And then in alphabetical order also. So it was like they had to
order. I checked.
They had to like cross tab it. It was it was in alphabetical order per position. So each time it would.
Alex Calendar was like second last.
I wonder what that means. I don't know. I can't tell. Had she played the last 2 games? I don't know.
So. Right, come on. Let's try and get on something a bit positive now. So the Australia game.
Say, do you just want to talk the squad that was announced?
Oh yes, we should actually address that.
Sorry, what was that, mate? Go on.
Should we just quickly talk through what the squad is?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Who's in the squad?
Yeah.
So we've got Gwendolyn Purse and Abby Constable as your loose heads. Also, and Maisie Davis. Caris Phillips, Molly Reed, and Rosie Carr. We'll get onto her in a bit, and then Cecilia Tuipulotu.
No. Carr was just ruled out. Carr was ruled out after Australia.
She's been completely ruled out. Yeah,
completely. She cracked her collarbone.
Cool. I was going to save that bit. I was just going with as announced. Then we've got two plotted
Oh, my
Dolores and
bad.
Jenny Scoble. And then in the second row, we've got Abby Fleming, Natalie John, George Evans, Fool the Poe, and Alu Purse. And then back rowers, we've got Leisha Butchers, Bryony King, Al Cal, Kate Williams, and Beth Lewis. So I'm guessing it's being listed
not
as
in
a
alphabetical
specific
order.
number 8.
Pardon?
See, not in alphabetical order. Beth Lewis does not come after Kate Williams.
And then, really annoyingly, they've now done. So they said they've given us forwards 1 to 9, 1 to 8 now back. So
Yeah.
you've got Jenny Hesketh as our sort of as an outlet. Well, as an outlet 15. Jasmine Joyce Courtney Keat, Nell Metcalf. So that's your back 3 players. Hannah Jones, who on here is listed as on the WRU page is listed as the tour captain. Hannah Bluck, Karen Lake, and Karis Cox. And then Flaky Jordan, Katie Power are our 10s, with Kira Bevan and Sean Jones as our only 9s.
So 2 10s, 2 9s.
2 10s, 2 9s, which actually, to be fair, with a 30-person squad, you're looking at 2 15s.
Right. So
is what you want to run in training.
That was also what I wanted to touch on just extremely quickly, is that having Kaylee Powell in there, having KP in there at all, I feel bolsters anything in the back line. I mean, granted, yes, she's only a 15 or a 10, but I mean, in a pinch, she can cover so much. She's a really versatile back. I'm excited she's here. I'm glad she's back. Because boy, we have a lot to discuss about the back 3 after Australia.
Okay, let's now talk about Australia. So the game began, and then we fell behind. So
Immediately.
wasn't a brilliant start to the game, shall we say? So what was your general thoughts on the game, guys? Just tell me how you experienced it.
All right.
Well, so for me, greatly, it was I came back from Cardiff down to Devon, and then it was bath time for my little one. So all my updates were coming from the group chat, and then I very quickly had to catch up on that first half. So there's a bit of a speed run on that, but it was a lot of, and Australia have broken the line, and we've got the ball, and Australia have broken the line,
which is the story of that game.
And then there was that is a terrible read from the 50. And then they were, that they should have caught that one. It was very. I said it's all sound effects for me for this game. No analysis, only sound effects.
Especially a lot of the positives that we just touched on from Scotland, I feel were regretfully not present, especially the line defense. That was a big problem. I will just touch it straight out of the gate, because it hurts my heart to say it as a Bears fan and as a fan of her personally. Jenny Hesketh had a really bad game. There is an entire reason that a few of those tries happened. And again, I am never one to just try to blame one player, but there were a few instances that I think maybe shouldn't necessarily have ended up as dire as they did. I think going forward, they're probably going to have to rethink the 15. There was a lot of running line defense problems. There were a lot of line breaks. Australia ran very hard. I'm not sure what Jo Yap has been doing, but it's something that she's done with a lot of her other teams. She did it at Worcester. But she inspires a lot of confidence, especially in attack, in ball carrying. We saw that definitely in the Australia game and in the way that Australia improved from the last warm-up that they played, which also didn't go their way. They were out for vengeance. We were out for vengeance, and you definitely saw it. It was a close game. It went down to the wire. We do have positives to talk about for this Wales team, definitely. But I will say that the discouraging part was that we saw some backsliding and some stuff that we had gotten really good. And I think it might be down to there was a lot of roster shuffling, both because of injuries and because of Ioan said he wanted to. There are some really interesting things to talk about there between the two squads that were played. But actually, you are putting up stats right now, and yeah, actually, we had a great day for lineouts. we didn't have a great day for restarts, but we
Yeah,
rarely do.
so the
Go on, please.
it's kind of like we were saying to them, "Hey Wales, stop being just a scrum and maul team." No, wait, not
Exactly.
like that.
No, wait,
And
not like that. No, and there were a lot of chances taken. Sorry, go on.
50% scrum success on our own ball. I should say that scrum stats are quite misleading because they only take into account your own putting. So we had 50%
Oh,
success on
okay.
our own putting. So
Okay.
that doesn't account for the number of times that Australia shoved us backwards, which
They
is,
also had almost double the scrum or over double the scrums.
yeah, which is, you know, that was the thing that we're supposed to be
That
good
happens.
at.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, for good at.
Go on, Harry.
I think the problem is if you look, that's 20 scrums in a game. That's very high. That's very high on
Right.
on for professional.
Like I was saying,
rugby.
there were a lot of handling errors. I understand that they don't have it here in these stats. In fact, if you scroll up a little bit, you'll
Oh no, I
see
do. Turnovers
oh, okay,
lost.
yeah. Okay.
17 by Wales, 15 by Australia, which is not
I
the
mean,
worst I've ever seen.
it's not the worst. The really good thing, and again, this is in context of comparing it against the opponent that we had. But if you look down there at the penalties conceded, we did do a lot of cleaning up with penalties, which is great. That said, we saw the turnovers.
Yeah.
Doesn't always matter.
12 kicks isn't enough kicks. This is the most
That's across the women's game, to be
Yeah,
fair.
this is the most interesting one. All of the best stats are map related, is my opinion. And
I agree.
this is a fascinating one. 52% of Wales's possession was in Australia's 22.
Wow.
How did we manage that?
So there were quite a few instances where we managed to basically force Australia in because their kicking actually out of hand wasn't particularly good, similar to ours. Distance, some teams just aren't very good at exiting with distance.
Yeah.
So we sort of pressured them in, but then we couldn't really do much. I mean, saying that, we did score. The tries we did score were all
Five
quite
tries.
range.
Five
Molly Reed
tries
got
to
2 off
three.
mauls.
5 tries to 3. In fairness, there was one chalked Australia try that I don't necessarily feel maybe should have. Obviously, the ref did. Great. Awesome. I'm Wales fans. That's great to me. But it was close to say the least. It was definitely not one team strongly over the other.
Yeah. So Wales had 85 rucks in this game, which is so the reason I'm looking at that for people who aren't statty.
Oh, I care very much.
The reason that I'm looking at how many rucks they had is because if you don't have very many rucks, then your percentages can kind of be misleading. So a high percentage of not a lot is still not a lot. But 85 rucks is quite a lot. So we did have a lot of ball in Australia's 22. We had a couple of opportunities. I'm thinking of the one where I can't remember who it was, absolutely should have scored in the first half, and just the ball just went into her face, into the ground.
Was that Karis Cox as well? I believe so.
Might have been.
But yeah, go on.
Those kind of things I can kind of forgive. If we are focusing on the performance, then
Well, look at that. Two line breaks to 9.
2 line breaks is not very many. So that kind of tells the story
to 9.
That kind of tells the story of we relied quite a lot on our maul in this game.
Also, the oh my god, sorry, chat.
Yeah.
The post contact meters is not good.
We should point out because we do have audio only listeners.
Oh yes,
so we've currently
of course.
got the Rugby Pass stats up, which we'll put the link for this in
absolutely
the description of the show just to make so you can see. But basically, post contact meters, Australia got 323 to Wales's 143, and that was with only 9 more carries. So that's a lot. I mean,
that's a big difference.
I'm telling you
about the fag packet maths. That's 3 meters per carry to just over 1 meter per carry. It's
the brave hard carrying. When you watched Australia in comparison with this Wales that we had, it looked stark to me. And again, I'm not even a backs knower. I don't even know that much about backs play compared to other stuff. Yeah. But the confidence, the trust in the people around them, which I'm sure will be shown in some way in the offload stats as well. Whether it was confidence or skill, they had more of it.
One offload by Wales, one successful offload by Wales in this game.
Sure.
Again, Not very many. With watching Australia, I was kind of like, go round us. You're trying to go through us a lot.
Yep.
Go round us. I promise that will work.
I think they capitalized on exactly what Harley had pointed out, is that compared to a lot of other teams that Australia plays regularly, which is another thing Australia and Wales don't play very often. And there are several Australian players who play in the PWR, so they've played a lot of these Welsh players. I think they probably did know that they could, and did, as we see, just crash straight through. I don't know why Australia or why Wales wasn't ready for that. That's kind of like rugby 101 stuff, especially if you see a bunch of like really muscular girls. We did not react.
Yeah, let's talk about some good players then. So Kate Williams comes out of the stats very good across the board.
Fantastic.
So where was she playing? She was a flanker in this game,
He
right?
was playing open side for this one.
She's playing 7, yeah.
So the stats drops, or if you do like a count of who has the best numbers, it's normally wingers and flankers that come out the best of it. But reassuring. Actually, having said that, women's rugby is a bit different. You do get kind of quote unquote weird players getting incredible stats sometimes.
We
Like
get a
if I
lot
go
of props. Props
yeah,
usually is
if
a
I
big
go
thing for
to-
women's. Yeah.
if I go to meters, let's just see who's top of the meters carry. So Nell Metcalf, Kira Bevan's
And-
quite high up there.
Sure, but Kate Williams is the second. That's not nothing.
Again, that's quite. It's about right because this is just meters carried. It's not post contact meters. It's not
No, it's not
meters
post contact.
Right.
So actually, it makes sense that a winger carries a lot because coming back from running it from deep when they do actually kick. 2 line breaks. Yeah, I thought Nell
2 line
Metcalf
breaks,
actually had
both
an
by Nell
incredibly good
Metcalf.
game from the wing.
Yeah.
Actually, it was quite.
Oh, in this
quite
game,
telling
I
when
was
she got
like,
brought into the start.
in this game, I was like, I'm begging you, use the other wing, please. Like, I'll show you this. I checked this earlier. Hang on. Defenders beaten top. Jazz Joyce with 3.
Is as expected. Yeah.
When she did that, I don't know, because I think she only got the ball once. I think she must have beat them all at the same time.
Yeah, I think there was this one. She got the ball.
He did have. I was going to say she did have one insane.
It's probably the
run.
one line break as well. To be fair,
she had one insane run. Yeah.
Yeah. Tries 2 from Molly Reardon, who came off the bench.
Yes, but she did. In fairness, she did come off early for.
Technically, came off the bench, and honestly, and again, of course, absolutely nothing on Rosie Carr. First of all, she's incredibly young. Second of all, she was kind of thrown directly into the Lions. That said, Molly Reardon coming in when she
broke
did
her collarbone.
And third, she broke her collarbone, which we hate. But that said, of all of the horrible things that can happen, Molly Reardon coming on ended up something very good, I think.
I actually just want a quick talk because obviously, so with the Cardiff Central podcast, we sort of, we adopted Gwali Lightning as our team playing out of and Molly Reardon is a player who we all hold very dear to our hearts.
She's
especially
great.
when we found out she's a converted 9 going to hooker, which just gives all us second team backs, second team forwards, just say, I could
do it too.
Scrum half, and I've just confirmed. See, we can do that sort of cool stuff. But I thought this was a coming of age game to her, so there's always a bit of worry about her around set piece. Yes, we've had some scrum issues. I don't think it was necessarily all that. I think it was just the Australian tight head was very good. Like I can't remember her name, but
Eva Carpani. She's one of the best players on the planet. Yeah, I mean Carpani is
unbelievable
is
levels of just scrummaging technique. But yeah, and the line out went all right. Yeah, it was a bit of pinching. I thought, to be fair, our line out worked really well. I thought George Evans and Abby Fleming was actually a really good combo. That worked, and I think Kate Williams as well did a bit of jumping as well. But actually, keep that. That was some of the best Welsh line out I've seen from a Welsh team not called the Ospreys in a long time.
Which is excellent.
A Welsh team
that
doesn't
excellent.
have Fafita in it. Sorry. Yeah.
Now that we know that Gwen Crabb isn't going, that's excellent because I mean, for something I do know and care a lot about, the line out is something that I was worried about. I'm even more worried about it now, knowing that we are going to WXV with literally 2 hookers and one not exactly in her prime, just because of the way that time and circumstance has been working. No shade on her, but is moving on. And so putting it all on Molly Reardon's shoulders is going to be one thing, and then also who she's throwing it to is another. And it seems like right now, I'm not sure why, but Alicia Joyce Butchers is on limited minutes. It seems like I can't really imagine a world where you wouldn't have her starting otherwise. but I'm really glad you brought up the line out, is because it's one thing that I, as a Wales fan, for not that long, to be fair, but as a fan have worried about, because that is something that you used to be able to really rely on.
Beth
And
and Lewis,
that I
10
will
line
say is,
outtakes,
yeah.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
So they're doing front ball jumping.
Yeah.
There was a lot of trying to get it out to the wing and then failing. I will say that. And that was a lot of
the handling was still not there. When you think that, the
does these stats have knock-ons, Hugh?
might have
handling
errors, but I don't know.
Handling errors. I'll take it.
No, turnovers lost is all it has.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes on the individual player thing, they might. But
yeah, wouldn't it be down in
turnovers
conceded?
So many things.
They have turnovers conceded per player. Most of those are knock-ons. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So, a lot by most people.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look at the people on that list right now, the first 5 are people that have the numbers because they're the ones that get the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A word on the opposition.
Actually, to be fair, I said
Harley, let me just say
not
this,
just
man. Harley, give me a chance, man. So, a word on the opposition. Tabua Tuina
Calvadra.
Yeah, she's good. She had lots of very good stats.
Very good, and she is young. She's going to be a menace. I had only just started reading about her in the Super W this year. I will admit I don't know that much about her, but I think it's because she is young and came up fast. I think she might have come through AFL. I'm not positive, but she's it's going to be a problem for next week.
Yeah. So the way that this game ended then, it felt like one of those games where if we'd have played for another 10 minutes, both sides would have scored another try.
Yes.
It was just you score 1, we'll score 1 type thing. We went behind with like 2 minutes to go because we scored our 4th try, and I said in the group chat that should be enough.
I remember you jinxed us.
And everyone was like, "Why would you say that?" And I'm like, "I'm not wrong. That should be enough." And it wasn't. Australia retook the lead. But then we went down the other end and scored ourselves on like the 84th minute or something.
I was going to say in a butthole clincher where it was almost not going to happen.
Yeah. So does that show something?
Does it? Honestly, I felt kind of like it was an inverse of Scotland in a way that it felt like at the end, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think we were going to win in the 83rd minute. I didn't think we were going to get the try that we did, and the one that we did wasn't exactly masterfully orchestrated. It was one that just worked because of, if I recall correctly, there were a bunch of, I mean, it wouldn't have been handling errors or else there would have been a whistle, but it was a bunch of, it was a bunch of advantage changed hands a bunch of times. And then we charged over. Wasn't that the one that took us like 7 phases to get over the line? It's not pretty.
7's not that bad. I mean,
yeah, true.
7's reasonable. All right, yes,
true.
It'd be great if we could score first phase every time, but yeah,
it would, and as an indicator of what we're facing from, because we're looking at other nations as well. Obviously, Australia matters because it's who we play next as well. But even with that said, it means that we know that Australia, in terms of line defense, isn't something that we can exploit because it's not there.
Are you saying that give the ball to Cecilia 5 meters out might be a tactic that still remains present and correct?
Am I wrong?
Well,
it's
can I
we haven't moved on.
One thing though, because I do want to talk about the one try not scored by a forward, which is Kira Bevan, and the exact reason that try was scored is because she didn't give it to Cecilia Tuipulotu when it looked like she was going to give it to Cecilia Tuipulotu, and it opened up a gap, and she did the typical 9 thing of just, thank you, scored right under the post. Great. But yeah, I mean, when she is such a good carrier, even when marked, that's a good thing. Like you've got to use her more often.
And as an apologist, I will have to say, because she's my favorite player, Alicia also scored. But yes.
Oh no, I was just wanting to talk this one thing where the actual setup is the not giving.
Oh, in terms of backs, my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Oh yes. Sorry.
Now for the new to the women's game, it's something that we have in Welsh rugby is that we can't dissuade ourselves that teams that were good in the 90s are not good anymore. So Australia are coming to the stadium in the men's game this this autumn, and everyone will be talking about how it's important to beat the Southern Hemisphere giants. Australia men's team is bad at rugby, like objectively.
And Australia women's has been for the past few years.
And exactly, Australia women's. This was our first ever win against them, but I think that probably speaks to how infrequently we play them, rather than anything else. Because Australia women
until
also not very good.
Until WXV, we were only playing them at World Cups.
Yeah, so the Ireland absolutely battered Australia a week ago.
Yep.
So yeah, so you can. It's one of those you can look at the scoreline like we won by 7. We won by a 1 score.
We won by 1 score. And
At
it was
home.
again one that I do not feel was a given. It could have just as easily not happened.
Yeah. So if I just have a quick look at this brings me on to the next thing that I wanted to chat about is the World Rugby rankings. Now,
Excellent.
They've come in for a lot of stick in the past, and I would actually argue that the men's rankings at the moment actually pretty much make sense. I think the one that's a bit out of place at the moment is Argentina, but this isn't a men's rugby podcast. The women's world rankings, on the other hand,
well, certainly after the other day, was it the other day or was it today that Australia beat South Africa?
Argentina beat South Africa. Technically yesterday, within the last 24 hours.
Right, that was a lot.
Anyway, the women's rankings, complete shambles. Like, what is going on here? So England
move and shift so easily.
England top. Everybody would agree with that. And it's a big gap. Then there's a lot of points down to New Zealand in second, Canada in third, who were pretty much neck and neck. But that will change hands quite a lot.
Yes.
France then come next, fourth. It's good so far, right? Good. Yeah, I agree with this.
This is all completely correct to me.
Yeah. Fifth, Scotland.
Fifth through ninth is always, yeah.
Oh, okay. Scotland, fifth best women's team in the world. Kind of
right now, yes.
I'd say between them and Ireland, isn't it? But it's not actually that different.
And I think I really look forward to Scotland playing Ireland. I think we have to wait for that for the next Six Nations, which is fine. I think if they both go the way that they're going right now, like I think that's gonna be really close. It's gonna be a really good game.
In sixth place was fifth place until the weekend, Australia.
And we were talking about that. You and I we were all talking about that in the chat. And I really do think that is playing off of old stuff. And it was that for a while their ranking was so good that they have to lose even more to really plummet.
Yeah, Australia absolutely not the fifth best women's team in the world. Then Ireland.
Yep.
Then USA in eighth now. Then
USA.
Italy, then Wales, then Japan. Now, didn't Japan beat USA quite recently?
Very narrowly, yeah.
It was something like 11-9 in August or something.
Yeah, I blocked that out for a lot of reasons. So, yeah, we did.
Can I get technical and nerdy with how the rankings work? So actually, to be honest, I don't use the World Rugby official one. There's a fantastic rankings calculator on GitHub. Actually, type in World Rugby rankings calculator, much better, and actually gives you a much better explanation than the World Rugby one. And you can do it real time, and you can totally. It's basically what reporters use so that they can do their so and so will drop down to X. I mean, not that rankings actually mean anything else, but because home team, because Japan beat USA at home, not away, they get 3 points added onto their ranking because that's what they consider a home advantage to be, based on looking at lots of historic games. Whether or not that's true or not, it doesn't matter, but that sort of thing. So that then means the gap of exchange points is different. There's also a limit. The maximum you can gain or drop is 3 point ranking points. So now Japan on 67th. If they beat France, they can only go up to 70 points or 70 points, blah, 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 blah. Even if they beat them by 1,000 points, right? And that is with there is a 1.6 point multiplier for beating by more than 15 points, because that's the only thing. They don't care about narrow losses, and any win above 15, they say that's a blowout, that's an extra win. And then France, likewise, will only go down to 84 points. So they won't drop down much further, because individual games don't tend to have a huge bearing on the rankings unless you have multiple, unless they are very tight teams, because it's over a long time. They say about 2-3 years. So for the men's game, it's about 2 years worth of games makes up your ranking. For women's game, of course, it's probably a bit longer because they don't play as
much
many
longer.
games.
Yes.
And Australia historically will play in the World Cup, and then they don't really play anything until the next World Cup.
For a long time.
So it'll take them a long time to drop back down, because they're just not going to have that point exchange, because you don't lose points by not playing. The only way you gain or lose points is by playing and being either winning or being beaten. And so it looks a bit shonky. So they've obviously just copy and pasted what works for the men, what works for women. Now, is 3 points home advantage necessarily the right thing for the women's game? I don't know. You don't get this bigger crowds. I think it tends to, for me, it's less of a factor. Like, I don't think teams necessarily win just because they're at home.
Depends on the travel. In the Six Nations, probably not. If Australia go to Wales, probably so.
Yeah.
And also,
then does it need to be more? And as I said, because this system is set up for, it works better the more games that are played by more teams. The other thing is, it's the ranking of the teams you're playing. If you're playing lots of really good teams, you'll get the issue that Italy forever has in the men's Six Nations.
Is that right though in the women's? Though, Julia, weren't we saying that it wasn't weighted in the women's game?
I know that it isn't weighted. It's not weighted the same way as it is for men. I didn't actually understand the way that our dear friend Hattie explained it. Shout out Hattie. I don't understand how it works. And also, I would like to make a very small note to what we just said. Actually, we won that game. That was why I blocked it out. It's because we won that game against Japan. Yeah, by a late penalty. I was like, why don't I remember a horrible loss that would hurt my heart? But yes, there isn't the weighting, which is true. That was part of the problem, and then the other problem is the sum total of the games, and that the averages are averaging it out is a complete shambles, because some games, like if you are a Six Nations nation, you are already getting so many more matches per year than several teams. Australia being one of the notable ones.
So kind of the team to watch out for here, and this is kind of straying onto like any other business. South Africa have announced lately, since we last recorded a podcast, that they're going to start taking women's rugby seriously now. This is extremely good news if you're South African. This is extremely bad news if you're anybody who's not South African. So, Julia, how does that make you feel, being not South African?
So I'm not South African, and because they really haven't taken women's rugby seriously, I guess almost fortunately, I actually don't have a ton of feelings either way, but certainly not bad blood, which is something that a lot of members of other nations have for South Africa. I still can't stand, and all of you South African guys, close your ears, still can't stand their fans online. But in terms of the team itself, I'm thrilled. It's one of, honestly, if I were at World Rugby, and especially if I were in the SARU, I would be ashamed a lot of the time that there is such a huge gap between the two. I mean, when I think of South Africa, and I mean, I guess because I'm a rugby fan, but like
the first thing I think of at the same time, that's how much of a gap there is
rugby. Yeah, I mean, and the women celebrated and were so happy and have been so supportive of the team, and we've joked about it before, just as fans of the game and fans of the players, but like Sia Khaleesi cares more about women's rugby than many people who work for World Rugby. There is a lot there that excites me. It is, of course, a culture where perhaps it was harder to take any women's sport seriously, but if you're going to do it, it should be the sport that your country bleeds for, and it's this one. I'm excited because it's been a long time that the Southern Hemisphere teams in women's rugby has just been Australia and New Zealand. I'm not saying that I think they're going to get up to that level immediately, but I'm really, really curious to see how fast you can ramp up when you're actually given the resources that you need, because we will never have seen a rugby nation that has built from so far down to I don't think they're going to come and beat the Black Ferns probably in the next 5 years. But like, if we can get to the point where they can hold against the Black Ferns, that would have been more development than we've seen for any women's team possibly ever.
Speaking
And
of Sia Khaleesi, I did a tweet about him the other day, and
he
it's the
liked it. I'm sure
first
he did.
it's the first rugby tweet that I've done where all of the female interaction wasn't porn bots. It was actual real women who interacted with it.
I'm just saying, I do wish that I could let the men's rugby fans, men's rugby players, whatever, know that like that man has so much women's goodwill in his bank. He could do anything. Like we were talking offline before we started recording about some unsavory men's rugby players who have been given perhaps way too many chances, or perhaps any chances at all when they shouldn't have been. He is the opposite of all of that, where it's just like I would let you hit me with your car. I would not make us call insurance. It's fine. It's fine. Can I have a picture with you? Like, that's where I'm at. The same way that I feel like, now, if Alona Mar ran you over, you'd be like, oh my God, thank you so much.
You're holding out your phone like, you want me to call
No,
an ambulance? Like,
I know.
No,
No, but for real, he's like, oh, do you need me to talk to your insurance agent? I'm like, yeah, that's who it is. I'm like, hang up on Hugh, hang up on Hugh, hang up on Hugh.
So I think South Africa could become, we've talked about this, about how
Yes.
there's four nations who take women's rugby seriously, and like that fifth spot is very gettable. Like whoever
Absolutely.
tries the most least can be
Yes.
the fifth team. South African can be fifth best in the world pretty quickly, I think. Elma
I think
Smith
so.
did a great video about it. Obviously, she's South African, and she said it's not just like because it's a woke thing to do. It's actually great business because
Yes.
it doubles your audience size. And I can tell you, like, I do, my various Twitter pages and things. If I do a tweet about the All Blacks or about whoever, I get a certain number of tweets. If I do a tweet about a South African player, it's 3 times bigger every single time. It's got the potential to be absolutely massive.
I really can't. I mean, I don't need to impress enough against the audience that we have here, because everybody knows, and that's the point of what I'm about to say, is that everybody in rugby knows about South Africa and knows how serious it is. And when you think about the viewers within South Africa, and we've already seen it, by the way, with their domestic competition, but they are already domestically streaming and broadcast airing their premiership. I feel bad that I don't know what their championship or premiership is called, but the one that the Bulls Daisies plays in. Those you can all watch now still. And we don't need to shift too much, because USA would be a completely different topic. But I am American, and we're about to launch a fully pro league. We've had semi-pro for a while, but we've had the WPL, and it's incredibly hard to watch. And this is a place that is always hungering for sports, and there's a ton of money here. South Africa isn't the case, and we still know that if you do it right, they will probably generate massive income. Elma was right. Elma is where I've learned a lot about what women's could be in South Africa, and they already have the infrastructure for it. They already have people like Elma, but also lots of other ones, especially local, especially ones that can speak Afrikaans and Sosha. All of that, they have it there, like it's built in for them. All you have to do is try a little, and it really is what you said. I think the jump could be massive. I'm thrilled that they're seeing that. They really have started throwing good resources at it. I think we've mentioned before, but they brought in Lynn Cantwell from Ireland, who has won a Grand Slam. She takes it very seriously. I think they're definitely eyeing other people. I honestly was worried about Giselle Mather for a minute. I was like, if anybody, they could throw a ton of money at her. But they could throw a ton of money at a few people, and it could absolutely turn the program around. I'm stoked. I would love another big competitor.
So I want to see. I mean, it's the same question whenever a team breaks through this: is because the money's great, but the other thing that they'd need is regular game time.
Right.
And where would we do? Because if they
I don't think they're going to
have the same sort of traveling thing.
And
they're going to have to try and go on time zones, so similar to how South African pro teams in the URC, or is it going to need to be? We making a new rugby championship, perhaps maybe with you have Canada, USA, Black Ferns, And then
the original
join in?
the original Pacific Four. You could. So there are a few things that people have been rumbling about, and it is because it is in such like an infancy stage. None of these are backed by science or anything. For if people are thinking that like I'm authoritative, I'm not. But there are a few ways that it can go. South Africa is very firmly not on the Pacific Ocean, but if Pac-4 were to be reformed in some way, because remember, we already really want Japan in. It does, the math doesn't math, but there could be two, because the other option was Fiji, and we are now seeing, especially in the warm-ups that they've been playing, probably aren't even up at that level yet.
Fiji
Another team that could be, but way more problems in South Africa. There is that. There is also bad news that happens to be good for South Africa, that much like the men's game, but different teams, there are a few key teams in Europe that have been left out of a lot of things. I'm thinking specifically of Spain. Spain has no one to play with regularly, and they're itching to break that ceiling. So will be South
Rugby
Africa
Europe
soon.
would make sense as a place for South Africa to go and play. That could be done.
Right. And I mean, I understand all of the many jokes to be made if that happens. I understand. I love maps, actually. I know where South Africa is, don't worry. But yes, some of those teams, they could also form their own. We have very few international, as in between nations, competitions. We have the 6N and we have Pac-4. And now we have WXV, which is great. WXV isn't even settled, so we don't even know what it will look like year to year. You need something that you can rely on, even if it is, the Pacific Four isn't ideal. The format has issues. A big thing about the Pacific Ocean is it's fucking huge.
Yeah.
It's very hard. It is already hard, and those are teams that do have more money. That said, if South Africa wanted, they could fund their women's team as much as USA funds their team, for sure. It's all there. This is the first time that I've kind of waded into what I know that men's fans talk about so much, and that I watch these conversations, but I don't know enough. But I do think that it would probably have the same problems as the URC. It's really hard to ask any emerging rugby nation to spend that kind of money and to figure out that kind of time, because remember, again, even though ideally they will all be pro by then, all of these women still have jobs. They have to be able to travel. It's why I think the domestic competition has become so strong before they have also emerged as a strong national team. It's, at least you can drive within South Africa.
I think South Africa can go basically, who wants to come play us? And teams will go and play them. Like the WXV2 is already hosted in South Africa.
I was just going to say, you're very right. And I know that that's true, because after the last WXV2, when it was in South Africa, everybody who went talked about how much they liked playing there. All of the USA girls, I watched all of their media. They were like, I had never been to South Africa. It's one of the coolest places I've ever been. I hope we're in 2 again next year. All sorts of stuff. Please hope for 1 next time, but it's fine. We are in 1 now, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think South Africa will get stuff. Like New Zealand will go and play them, because they've just got that thing. Like someone in rugby New Zealand will be like, okay, we'll go and do that. So I don't think that's a problem.
Or knowing them, they'd be like, you know what? I was going there next week anyway. Why don't we just bring the team?
I mean, they could. They've got this huge tour that they're going to bring on next year with men's. Yeah. I could see them being even if, oh yeah, well, it'll be, and they'll see it as charity, which is shit. But fuck it, if it gets a game on, right now. I mean, because the big thing they were talking about, and the same thing and it's the same issues when they talk about it with South Africa, when there's ever talk of shake up at the international scene. So, same playing teams in Africa, and you're just like, the quality isn't there. I mean, for the men's, the closest one is Namibia, and Namibia will play. They'll play like Kenya or Tunisia, walk it, and then they get absolutely dicked at the World Cup. Yep. I think it's probably Kenya's probably the best team.
I was just going to say
African team thing. So I mean, don't look. If we're looking at the difference between the South African teams,
wow, I have to do a lot of scrolling down. Yeah, Kenya.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so South Africa does have Kenya. They do play each other regularly. The 3 that play super regularly are South Africa, Kenya, and Madagascar. That's one of the many reasons why we're thrilled about seeing Madagascar in 3, not necessarily because we think they'll do amazingly. I'm going to spoil it for everybody. They're not. Unfortunately, they just lost again to Kenya.
I was going to say, I saw that score. It was 68-17 or something
Yeah,
along those
yeah.
lines.
Yeah, I was watching that game. I will say that the Mackies had some stuff going on that I think should probably be evened out. Well, actually, no. WXV is coming up really fast. Never mind. But at least something to look at. But yeah, the fact that they got through and Kenya didn't was kind of a freak accident. They've got those three, which is great, but three nations at that level does not make,
especially when two of them
yeah.
aren't at that level. That's what to be fair.
That's the big
to
thing.
them. Yes, I know how huge rugby is in Madagascar, and both goes with, but the women's are the ones who are actually getting a lot more game time.
And we can't.
It's still not
exactly, and we can't dance around it forever. It's not a comfortable thing to talk about, but we do have to talk about it when we talk about this region. Is that they also, every member of those nations, or every player in those nations, also every person in those nations, faces a bunch of issues just day-to-day life that we don't. And a lot of the challenges that there are to playing rugby at an elite level have nothing to do with their fitness or nutrition. So it's hard to predict because of those items, and we do know that no matter how much heart you have and no matter how much you play and how much the people like it, Madagascar is a good example. It's not going to make you a good team overnight. The process will be longer. I think South Africa worries about that, and I think that it's always hampered their progress in terms of women because there isn't anybody to play. You're right. It's something that I don't think about that much because when I think about the immediate region, it's kind of like, well, it's not their fault that they can't. There's just no one there. They're at the bottom of the continent.
So just to round out the chat on South Africa, the last thing that I'll say is I think more people should have been more pissed off more publicly about the fact that South African men's had dominated World Rugby for however long, and South Africa women's was not even a footnote. South Africa Rugby Union should have been getting more stick for it, and I think we should be giving the thumbs up that now that they are trying, but it's like a well overdue. So
yeah,
just to finish off the pod then with a look ahead to WXV. So we don't have to just talk about Wales. We'll finish off talking about Wales, but it's just generally about WXV. What's something that you're looking forward to from this tournament?
I'm looking forward to the new teams. Like we talked about, we are going to see Madagascar in their first ever global competition, which is great. Honestly, we are hoping that this iteration gets us another step closer to like finalizing the way that it works. And I'm hoping, and this is a very stupid hope, but it's one that I always hope, that something goes terribly wrong, not to any of the players or the teams, but globally or something, and they never go to Dubai again. I don't know how it'll happen, but I want it to happen.
Yeah. I'm trying to find like who's actually in it, and I'm on World Rugby's official WXV website, and it's not helping. I'm going to do Wikipedia instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, just Googling. I'm going to go with my thing. So, admittedly, it's at the glory showy end of the WXV one, but for me, Ireland's going to be the thing I'm looking most forward to.
Absolutely.
Because I want to see where they are, like what Wales were trying to do with when they were in WXV one, but I actually have some hope that they will learn something from it.
Yeah, see if they can learn when Wales didn't.
And I particularly, probably a perceived bottom battle is going to be that Ireland USA game. It's probably going to be a battle for fifth as well.
Yeah, sorry, Julia. I think Ireland there.
Oh no, that's absolutely it. And I've had this conversation with several people who apologized to me, and I'm sad. Whatever. I really wish USA was in two again. To be honest, I think it's more where we belong. I am a very big USA fan. They are my first team. I love them, and I will stand by them. I do worry about WXV one, especially the very big progress that we've seen from the likes of Canada and to a lesser extent France. But I think the bottom fight will be Ireland.
WXV one is Canada, who host it, England, France, Ireland, New Zealand, United States. Canada, France is the game that's got everyone talking. That's the one where it's
the best.
It's like who's really the third best team in the world type of thing. Yeah. But genuinely it's one of those. It goes back to these teams don't play each other very often. So these are two teams who we're not sure which one's best. And fortunately, in sport, we have a very defined way of finding out who's best. And it's by arguing on Twitter. No, it's by playing each other. So they're going to do that. So looking
The
forward to
great
that.
the great thing is when Canada and France play each other, they can curse each other out bilingually. Beautiful. It's a
That is
beautiful thing.
amazing. WXV2, interesting. I'm interested to see how Japan are going to go in this,
Hmm.
having given USA a very good game.
Yes.
And also, Japan women's team is similar to Japan's men's team in that they play quite a unique brand. So, Julia, I was talking to David Lawrence about this. Shout out, David. And we were saying that we don't understand why more women's teams don't copy how Japan play because the, there are some nations who find it easier to play big bruising rugby, which ironically Wales is one of them. But there's other nations where that's not their strength. So, what's your take on that?
I it's a very good question, and I'm really glad that David framed it that way. He always asks really thought-provoking questions. That's a really good way of framing it because I think that that is also the answer. Um, I think that it is. I mean, we know that it's a difference in physicality. I I have a little bit more of a misty woo-woo view of perhaps why. And I do believe that there is at least a little bit of I want to call it psychology. I don't know, the ethos of rugby. It has always been being the biggest and the bruisingest and the hardest hits. And I feel like, especially for women, and for teams that are trying to make their name in the sport, and also the sport being what it is, I think there is a resistance to admitting perhaps that you aren't as strong as your competitor. Not that that's actually what it is, but it's the perception of that. And I do know that because I've heard it from commentators when I've watched Japan women play with other teams. It's sometimes, even if they don't mean to, it sounds disparaging, but there is so much highlighting of the fact that they play for speed, and that they understand that they need to be evasive, perhaps more than being Eva Carpani, being able to just run through people. I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that when knowing that you're a smaller team and knowing that speed will be your best friend. They also have great handling. There are a lot of
They've
things
got
that they do
amazing handling.
exactly, and there are a lot of things that they do well, specifically those things that are absolutely parts of rugby, but because of what we have traditionally highlighted as like the truest facets of rugby, the things that are most important. And it does come from the fact that the men's game grew first and then the women's grew from the men. Um, I think that there is, and I think about in contrast, Wales, especially Wales right now, because if we look at the girls on this team, and we separate how much they're always working out and all of that, they're not huge. These are not the strongest girls on the pitch. They're absolutely trying to be. And a lot of the time we see them trying to play that way. And in fact, we discussed it earlier. It just doesn't work, especially when you're playing against a team that is much bigger than you. Um, Japan looks at something like that and is very practical and has said, yeah, we're not overnight gonna nobody's going to be the size of Eva Garbani. Nobody is going to be the size of Babal Walacha. But Japan can absolutely play against the likes of South Africa because they figured out how to outrun them and they figured out how to read lines and look for breaks. They don't mind taking hints from their sevens compatriots. I think about some other teams, especially ones that rely a lot on brute strength, and they wouldn't be caught dead asking their sevens players like, how could I fix this or that.
Mm.
They don't mind. And maybe it is the spirit of rugby, maybe it's ego. Also, by the way, a lot of coaches are still old rugby men. I know that we complain about it in our chat, that a lot of coaches and a lot of administrators are still playing a rugby that is for men and is from 20 years ago. A lot of those people are coaches and directors of rugby. uh I really like I really like Japan for that. And I always have. I understand that because other teams are just going to be bigger and still have some fast people. It's going to be harder. I'm not saying that they're going to sneak up on us and take the Black Ferns, but it's definitely a way to play. Um in terms of who could copy that or who could reproduce it in a way that they have, I don't know.
Mm.
But I really wish that we could break directors of rugby and break head coaches and attacks coaches and everything out of the mindset that we have to play the one way that we've always played rugby. It worked for them. It's working for other Asian countries as well.
Yeah, so skipping on then onto WXV3. Fiji, Hong Kong. Hong Kong is going to be a big deal in rugby in the future because they have got money. Trust me, guys.
Oh,
They
they do.
they have cash. Madagascar, we've spoken about. Netherlands, who I think we've spoken about in the past. Spain. Why am I hearing people talk about Samoa so much at the moment?
That's a good question. Manusina has been having a pretty okay time. They've been competing just within Oceania. And I think they're doing okay. I don't think they're doing amazingly. Not really sure why you would have been hearing
Well, I heard
a lot
them. I
of.
saw that they won a game the other day, and their kicker, the place kicker, was really good, something like that.
Oh,
I
yes,
think
yes.
Sophie, of the the lady who's been on David's podcast a lot of times.
I'm not sure, but yeah, that I mean that could absolutely be it. Unfortunately, place kicking never wins a match. I mean, okay, yes, literally it does, but in terms of like using it as a whole
I would like to
strategy is
introduce you
hard.
to the 2012 and 2013 Wales team, which
Oh,
was won basically on being able to kick more points than anyone. And actually, in women's rugby, it can make the difference if
that's
you
true.
have a good
That's
first skip
true.
and a bucket skip.
No, you're right.
So
Then yeah, that might be it. And certainly, as we have discussed at length on several episodes of this podcast, kicking is always a question mark, often a problem for women's teams. So
hmm.
power to them.
So
Also, I'm
okay,
wondering if it's the whole thing with the Samoa men where they think, "Oh, they're going to be big and physical,"
That's what
and
I. That's what.
that
That was
could
what I was going to guess.
blow holes through smaller team. Because looking at them, I imagine, other than maybe the Fijiana, who similar build, although I'm hoping they've got
Yeah,
a bit more
they're
vision.
honestly the Fijiana are having a rough time right now. They also
yeah.
just did. Yeah, they also just did a series of warm ups in Europe, and it didn't go well.
Hmm.
I'm actually curious because in my mind I thought Fiji was going to be one of the contenders to win three, but it doesn't look like that now.
Okay, so let's pick our winners for each one. So WXV won Red Roses.
Yep.
Anybody disagree?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean it's not the World Cup, so yeah, Red Roses.
Yeah.
WXV
I
2.
think I think okay, wait. I think there's a very narrow 0 point many Harley is here, so I don't want to say anything stupid. Very minuscule chance. Just because it's at home and because they're eyeing such a high, it could be Canada. But I
No
think it'll
Sophie
be
de
the Red
Goody.
Rose.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
No de Goody, no
no,
party.
Sophie de Goody is
No
Sophie
to
de
goody,
Bad.
no prize.
So
Sorry.
who I really don't know who's going to win WXV2. Scotland?
Scotland.
Yeah.
I'm going to for me, my money would be on
Scotland.
Scotland if I was going to bet on it.
After the way that we
Mainly
saw them
because
play Scotland.
I don't think any of the three teams in the other pool could beat Scotland.
WXV3, Spain.
Yeah, I guess probably the most consistent
My answer,
team.
my answer there is probably Spain or possibly the Netherlands.
Didn't Spain batter the Netherlands in Rugby Europe?
A while
Spain
ago,
better
and
most
then
people in Rugby Europe, so that's the thing.
right, that's the thing though, is that Spain also doesn't belong in that championship. Spain belongs in our Six Nations the way that Georgia belongs in yours.
Yeah, but the problem is which one drops out, or do you make it 7 Nations and then there's all sorts of format issues?
Oh God, and then everybody gets mad. No, I know. My answer for who for us would leave is not friendly. Answering any of them is not friendly, but
it would be Wales.
No, none can leave. None can leave.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And I don't think
It's
it would
not
be
even worth a conversation having.
Exactly. My answer is actually Italy, but it's just because I want people to fight with me. No, please don't. Anyway.
So, and where do we think Wales is going to place then in WXV2?
Who's
Is
the
there an
other
argument to
team
say
in
that
our
we
pool?
should
Because it's
be the second
Scotland
best
and
team in
Italy,
it?
isn't it?
What was it?
I'm just thinking who's in our pool.
That's what I was saying. Is I'm trying to find
then
the
it will
pool.
then I know which playoff we're going to be aiming.
I forget which our pools are. Can you
I think
please
we're playing
remind me?
Japan.
We're playing Australia, Japan, and Italy as well. Weirdly.
Okay, so I think Australia
So
again is going to be a toss up. Japan, I think. Oh my God, I do think that on the right day, Japan could beat us. In this current form, and now that we know that there's absolutely no no coherent line defense. Go on.
It's a styles makes fights game that
Yes.
Japan are very well set up to exploit our weaknesses, but
That's what I was
we're
going to say.
also
Is
very well set up to exploit theirs.
yes, it just so happens that we are like two Lego, like everything that they have, we don't have. Everything that we have, they don't have.
Yeah.
I
And
think
because
it's
of the
gonna be
nature
who's
of
least
rugby,
worse at their weaknesses.
yeah,
It's
the
going to be
nature.
like if Wales can be slightly better at back play than Japan are at forwards and like the physicality battle, we might just edge it.
And here's something: did Italy play any warm ups? I have not seen a single warm
Yes,
up
they
squad
played
from them.
Japan.
Oh, who Japan won, didn't they?
No, Italy won quite comfortably.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, then in that case, oh, okay. Then I
So we're
feel
looking at
less
South
confident.
Africa's going to be a third team in our pool. So I think Scotland's going to be top of that because obviously you've got because the weird way WXV is for
No,
those who
no
aren't
question.
aware. Just want to say, so you've got six
Yep.
people in the league structure. It's split into two pools of three, and then you play the three teams who aren't in your pool, and then you get round first, second, third, and that, and then you play a final playoff for all placing. So whoever's top of both pools, which I probably maybe go Italy and Scotland, possibly. I don't know. It depends on how Australia do.
There's a world where Wales win all of the pool games, all of their pool games, which would be a very unprecedented number of wins.
I was
going to
say it's possible, but just to steal everybody listening, it is unlikely, but it is possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair, Wales could still win all their pool games and still not be top of their pool because Scotland wins them all by more. Because of the weird
it's one
way.
of those pools where you play people not in your pool. World Rugby standard competition.
Can I just bring myself onto one complaint?
One complaint?
Two of our one main complaint is the timings of when these games are played.
It was very like, hey, it was on too early in the morning in New Zealand. Okay, we'll put it on in Canada then. No, that's not what we wanted.
Never mind that. WXV2.
It's all right for you, Julia, because you
care
live
about
in the
3
wrong
o'clock
place.
on a Friday is a
terrible
time.
And I almost never get beneficial time, so you can shove it. I never get anything on my continent. And even still, so what's even better is that even still, it is the worst time zone for me in North America. So you could play, I guess you could play in Hawaii, which is 6 hours behind me, but otherwise,
yeah, it's just the annoying thing of they've gone for South Africa, which is a great time zone for the UK and UK audiences, and then they've put them on the most inconvenient times of the week, which is early Friday afternoon, which is when everyone's in work. It's like, do you want people to watch this?
I was gonna say, which is another reason, by the way, that Dubai is a bad choice. I'm not even getting into my stupid political stuff. Dubai is not conducive to anybody who watches rugby, because no one watches rugby there. But
anyway, that brings us to the end. So if people are still watching / listening, you've clearly enjoyed it. So please consider giving us a subscribe on YouTube. We're very close to 400 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So if you could help us get that would make a huge difference to us. And if you are listening on an audio version, whether that be Apple's or Spotify, Apple. If you're listening on Apple's, well done. Then give us a 5-star review and leave a comment. If you leave comments, we always answer them. We might read them out on the show, etc., etc. This show will also have its own Twitter page from this episode moving forward, which already has many porn bots following it.
It does.
And me.
And Harley. And the links for all of that will be in the descriptions wherever. Okay. Thank you to my friends and colleagues for joining me this evening. And we will speak to you during or after WXV. We haven't decided yet, but you'll be the first to know about it. So thanks, everybody.
Sounds good. See you then.